Hello. This morning, the stock market gapped down pretty hard in pre-market, about 1.4% lower, which is a pretty sizable gap down. And it kind of set us into a very cautious tone in open. As you could see in SPY here, we actually tried to rally a bit after the bell, and buyers stepped in trying to push us higher. But during the late morning, we started to sell off again and set a lower low after the our market opened. And it looked like it just might be one of those straight downward days. But during the afternoon session, things started to pick up in the afternoon, and we started to rally a bit. And we actually closed pretty strong at the close. So intraday, we had a full mix emotion of weakness, selling pressure, and then a late rally showing some resilience. And after the market, QQQ popped pretty high after market, and just purely based on Google News and Apple as well. And they actually rallied pretty hard after the market. I think Google actually made a new all-time high after market, which is kind of insane to say that. How we open tomorrow really depends on how heavy these gains will hold overnight. And if Apple and Google carry that momentum, we could probably lift a little bit higher after the open. Um, the VIX actually printed a pretty strong high in the morning. We actually got to as high as 19%, which is a pretty big spike. But by close, you could see this candle kind of went down and finished up around 6% on the day. Now, here's the interesting thing. When the VIX spikes over 10% in a session, we usually see some sort of a reversal and often a rally the next day or two. But today, it pulled back just under 10% threshold. So that kind of suggests we might see some continuation of selling tomorrow. But honestly, that pattern doesn't always play out cleanly. So let's just see how it plays out tomorrow and just be more cautious on your plays. And for the ADD, that was the indicator that I talked about on my last video. This, what I have on my right, is the ADD level. Let's go into intraday. We actually hit the oversold territory of minus 1800 in early mornings. And so once that gets hit and it doesn't go beyond minus 2000, I look for some sort of bounce for some of the call options. So that was my signal for the day when it hit minus 1800. My only trade was playing the QQQ 567 calls, which I grabbed around 2.0 around 9:40 a.m., which is right around here. And so pretty much right at opening bell, those contracts open up to as close to, as high as 3, but I sold mine at 2.7, and that's when I took profit. So after that, I stopped trading for the day because it's just one of those days where it's best just to sit out. Your contracts might get washed pretty quickly. Those same contracts that I had in the morning for about 2 and sold for about 2.7 actually went pretty low to like 1.7, 1.3 at the low of the day. And then when it reached to around 3 o'clock, those same contracts actually hit only around 2.6 again. So since those contracts were expiring on Thursday, and if I had held those probably would be as high as probably around 3.5 tomorrow at opening bell. But who knows? We don't know what QQQ or the market's going to open at tomorrow. And finally, let's talk about the skew index. The skew index actually hit 1.5, sorry, 151.48. Wasn't a big of a drop from the previous day. And the previous day was just about close to 0.5%, or sorry, yeah, close to 0.4% from the previous day. So all signs are pointing to sell, but I suspect a lot of people might actually step in and rally tomorrow and perhaps fade into the rest of the week. Um, but it's, when skew is falling, it usually signals that downside protection is cheaper, and that trader might be anticipating further selling pressure. So historically, when skew gets down to, let's say, the 130 level, that's when we see massive buying step in. But that typically comes only after a big dump from of like 3 to 4%, like I had mentioned, and that's usually from the new all-time highs. So I'm still suspecting Q to hit new all-time highs first before we see a massive dump into a 3 to 4% dump in the next, that would come from days and weeks of selling, just like what we saw in February. But right now, some of the setups that I like is Q. As you can see, a massive volume candle with a hammer that's just above the Bollinger, just wicked out about the Bollinger Band. That's the reason why I played Q today. I also like Meta. Like I mentioned in my last video, Meta just needed to print a pretty high volume bar, which today it did, but not as high as I liked. So we'll keep an eye on that. I also like Microsoft. Also created that candle that we talked about, but again, not enough volume for it to justify a play in this ticker. Palantir as well. Just didn't really get to the bottom of the Bollinger Band that I like to enter any place here, but it's showing a lot of strength in Palantir, so just keep an eye on that. So just to wrap it up, we had a big gap down, intraday volatility, and a very strong close. Apple and Google gave us some sort of relief after market, so let's hope that these push that momentum after into the market open tomorrow. So VIX, keep an eye on that. It did cool a bit, so it gives us a little mixed signal. That ADD intraday play was very clean bounce setup that I loved. And again, skew index telling us that we might have some sort of selling pressure ahead before the buyers really gets aggressive into buying. So overall, tomorrow's opening is going to be very, very interesting. We could see some strength, but if volatility creeps back up, selling pressure is still could return. But let's just stay disciplined, stay patient, manage your risk, play small, and we'll go from there. And I'll report in the next video.